I hope things are well with you and your family. I wanted a chance to talk with you about the course and the work that we're doing. I wanted to sort of, in some ways, talk to you a little bit about the way I am approaching our text and the way I'm using that, and then I'll be providing some lectures of prophets, individual prophets from. I've done that with Amos. I'll do it with Hosea, Micah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel as we go. But what I wanted to do today is just briefly talk to you again about why the prophets. Why study the prophets? I mean, when people talk about studying the Hebrew prophets, typically you think about studying an ancient tradition that it dates back to a particular text, and that maybe it doesn't have any relevancy in the world that we live in. But if you believe that justice is important, if you believe that if you believe in equality and fairness, if you believe in inclusion and how important all of those things are, and how that relates to the world that we live in, then I'm here to tell you there's something that's very relevant about the prophets and their work. And so I wanted to remind you today a little bit of what you're reading, The Liberating Path of the Hebrew Prophets, one of our texts. And I just wanted to remind you of what the author said at the very beginning. Wisdom, courage, and vision. The world needs these powerful human resources today. And I believe that to be true, and I believe the study that we're doing of the Hebrew prophets can be applied to much of the wisdom that we'll gain from this study can be applied to the world that we live in today. And so that's why I believe this study is important, that it's relevant, that it has something to offer all of us. So I hope that you will dig in and that you'll do your very best work, that you'll take this seriously as an academic study, but that you'll also understand that there is a relevant aspect to this study to our everyday life and world that we live in. And I'll be trying to bridge that gap a bit. I'm also going to be trying to bridge these texts that we're reading. You know, the social world of the Hebrew prophets, that text, it gives you a really good idea of the social context from geography to the historical context and the social world that the Hebrew prophets faced. I'm going to be using these two texts as in the reading. We'll work our way through the text. But I'm going to also be providing information, notes, lectures on individual prophets as we go. I hope that you'll find that meaningful and helpful in your own study. I wanted to also mention about the Hebrew prophets and their work. Something that I think is important is in chapter 5 of The Liberating Path of the Hebrew Prophets. I'm sorry, I'm doing this lecture outside. I thought it would be a nice day to do that, but didn't take into account the motorcycles and the cars, I guess. But I wanted to share this idea with you in chapter 5. Walter Brueggemann, and I've already included some videos of Brueggemann. You need to look him up. This Walter Brueggemann has as much to say about the Hebrew prophets as anyone. He's written extensively in this area. But he said this. He said that each prophet needed to engage in a battle of narratives. You may wonder what that is initially, but to be honest, he goes on. The royal narrative endorsed by the privileged class focused on the value of institutions. In this worldview, the stability of the kingship and the temple guaranteed the welfare of the people. The royal narrative held that the status quo was the natural and inevitable order of society. That's the royal narrative. But the prophets, the Hebrew prophets, came along and they weren't interested in maintaining the status quo. They believed that there was something wrong with the status quo, with the way the world was organized and the way in which power was being used. The wealthy were getting wealthier and the poor were getting poorer, and they were being forgotten. There were people on the margins that were just completely mistreated in that world. And so the prophets were not about trying to maintain status quo. They were about disrupting the status quo, and they created they created an alternative narrative. They used subversion, and they were sometimes very direct in their approach. At other times, they would use parables or stories to undermine the legitimacy of what was known as the royal narrative. And so Pergamon reminds us there is this ongoing battle of narratives. In other words, what is the truth? What should the world look like? And what does it mean to practice justice in the world? What do you do? What do you do in a world where inequality seems to be going wider and wider instead of being bridged? And what does equality look like? And inclusion? Well, those are the issues that we'll be looking at, not just today, but in the days ahead. And I hope that you will enjoy our time together in the course. I look forward to the days and even weeks ahead. I started to say months, but in the summer we really don't have that much time, do we? We'll have to move, and we'll move quickly. You'll see me doing more lectures. I'll try to keep them brief. And I also want to host a couple of Zoom classes so we can try and really have some class discussion together. I'm utilizing the discussion board. I also want you to think seriously, if you haven't already decided, maybe a particular Hebrew prophet that you want to do a paper on, or a particular social justice kind of issue that you would like to do your paper on, and apply the prophet's message to that. Either way, I'll be glad to help you in the days to come. You take care, and I'll be checking in later.